we were seconds to midnight. An entire civilization was threatened with extinction. And then, in the final hours before Armageddon was unleashed, Trump announces the ceasefire with Iran. The US and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. We're going to get into what all that entails. And if the ceasefire is even ceasefiring, because if you take a look, it appears it's a bit of a process, as you can see. Bitcoin is making its presence felt. Immediately surged to 72K on the news. What does Bitcoin know? And what is it telling us? Did the Strait of Hormuz, did they just flip to Bitcoin? Did Bitcoin just become the currency of the energy trade? Because we got people whipping out kazoos, maybe kissing randos on the street. Everyone is breathing a sigh of relief. The war is over. It is over, right? Right? Well, you're not gonna like this, but according to Dalio, we're nowhere near the end of this thing. And he may be right. What if the entire purpose of this war wasn't to win? What if it was meant to just distract us or to usher something else in because they see the writing on the wall? Oh, and we're not here to make light of the government. We don't do that. We're not here to do that, are we, Tim?
You don't make light of this. You don't make light of what's going on in our government. It's our government!
That's right. We're just asking questions. Is the dollar on life support? If so, what does that mean for you and me, for America, for Bitcoin, for Christy Gnome's husband's big fake bazoongas, for individual freedom and civil liberties in the new world order being constructed while we all monitor the situation? Everything. We got a big show today, so put on your Miss Doubtfire outfit and strap in. The toilet's clogged, but nothing stops this moon mission, baby. Send it!
I have the opportunity now to ask you about Iran. There are latest developments, I think very positive developments during the night that we received, that there is a ceasefire. What can we know more about the latest developments in the Middle East?
Yes, that's why I was a little late this morning. I was up very late last night and talking about that. Look, I do think there are good developments here. And let me just say a few things. First of all, what the president set out to do was decimate the Iranian military, decimate their ability to wage conventional war. And that military objective, as the president said yesterday, as I said yesterday, has been achieved. And because of that, what the president did is he basically issued an ultimatum to the Iranians. He said, open up the straits, stop trying to hold the world's economy hostage, and we'll engage in a ceasefire. And that's exactly the agreement that we came to last night. The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And not just the United States, but also our allies have agreed to stop attacking. And that is the basis of this fragile truce that we have, which is now, 8 to 12 hours old. Now, here's what I'll say about this. I've learned a lot about the Iranian system and a lot about the way the Iranians negotiate. Because the president told me last night the Iranians are better negotiators than they are fighters. I'm sure they don't like to hear that, but it's true. But here's a couple things. So, one, just in the response that we've seen from various segments of Iran, you have on the one hand people within Iran who have responded very favorably. The foreign minister who said, look, we agreed to the United States' terms. We'll do a ceasefire, we'll do a negotiation, we'll open the Straits of Hormuz, and then we'll see if we can come to more agreement down the road. So some of the people have responded favorably and have said the right things. And then you have some people on social media within their system who are basically lying about what we've accomplished militarily. They're lying about the nature of the agreement. They're lying about the nature of the ceasefire. And so you have just, even within their system, and this is why I say this is a fragile truce, you have people who clearly want to come to the negotiating table and work with us to find a good deal. And then you have people who are lying about even the fragile truce that we've already struck. And that's just an interesting thing about their system. And
well, Taco Tuesday delivered, am I right? Here's a rundown of the past few days. Let's start with Trump saying this.
The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night.
Then Trump, for some reason, converted to Islam just in time for Easter to share a special message. Trump tells Iran, open the f***ing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Something, something, praise be to Allah. Now, since we all just averted nuclear holocaust, let's take a moment to appreciate some of the great memes this statement from America's first orange president brought forth. Here's one featuring the Gipper, Mr. Gorbachev. Tear down that wall, you crazy or you'll be living in hell. Praise be to Allah. And my personal favorite, right here, I'm going to let you guys read that one. I almost broke a freaking rib when I first saw it. So I hope you appreciate this. Oh, but you think you were nervous this whole time? What didn't you think of the Easter Bunny? Look at the guy. Then came the big one. A whole civilization will die tonight. Trump also said this.
Of years. Now with Venezuela, and we just so you understand, the people of Venezuela, they say if I ran for president of Venezuela, I'm polling higher than anybody has ever polled in Venezuela. So after I'm finished with this, I can go to Venezuela. I will quickly learn Spanish. It won't take too long. I'm good at language. And I will go to Venezuela. I'm going to run for president. But we're very happy with the president-elect that we have right now.
He said some other crazy things. People began to question his sanity. 24 members of Congress called for Trump's impeachment or removal, most of them after he posted that a whole civilization will die tonight thing. Then, right before everyone thought he was going to push that big red button, my God, that image is terrifying, an announcement of a 2-week ceasefire was made. People are wondering, what was all this for? And made to believe it could lead to peace. The war is over, right? We'll get to the why in a moment, but first, let's let Ray Dalio answer that last question. He says GFY and buckle up because this war isn't going anywhere. There's that hope and optimism we love to see. Ray Dalio says cry harder. He doesn't care about your feelings, and honestly, neither do I. We're just so emotional right now. Because, while everyone's out here popping champagne over a 2-week ceasefire, Ray Dalio, the man who spent, 50 years, $500 million studying every financial collapse in the last 500 years, just looked the world dead in the eyes and said, we are nowhere near the end of this thing. And I kind of believe him. Here's what most people don't understand about Ray Dalio's framework. He's not a pundit. He's not guessing. The man mapped out a 13-step cycle for how world orders collapse. He's been tracking it for decades, and he just told you we're at step 9. Step 9 out of 13. You want to know what step 11 is? Direct military combat between major powers. So yeah, 2-week ceasefire, great. Enjoy the weekend. The sides are already drawn. China with Russia. Russia with Iran. Iran is with North Korea and Cuba. On the other side, US, Ukraine, Europe, Israel, the Gulf states, Japan, Australia. That's a world war in slow motion, and it's been assembling itself for years while we were watching Netflix. Dalio's not speculating. He's reading UN voting records. He's reading treaties. He's reading energy flows. He says China gets 80 to 90% of Iran's oil output. You think China's going to let that supply line get cut off? You think they're neutral here? They are not neutral. And here's where it gets ugly for the dollar. The United States currently has 750 to 800 military bases in 70 to 80 countries. China has one. Dalio's point, and history backs this up completely, overextended empires cannot fight wars on 2 fronts. Cannot. It has never worked. Not once in 500 years of recorded history. So, while everyone's debating whether Trump is crazy or genius for the ceasefire play, the rest of the world is watching. Every leader sitting near a U.S. military base right now is running the same calculation. If America can't decisively handle Iran, a mid-level power, what does that mean for us? And that calculation changes everything about the dollar, about the reserve currency, about who holds what and why. Dalio says, and this is the line I want you to tattoo on your brain, the world order has shifted from a multilateral rules-based order led by the dominant U.S. power to a might-is-right world order with no single dominant power enforcing order. Read that again. No single dominant power. And that is the death certificate of dollar hegemony being written in real time. We are living in the 1938 to 39 analog. Dalio says it himself. His indicators are flashing the same signals they flashed right before the last two world wars. Budgets blowing out, debt exploding, money printing accelerating, capital controls coming. Financial repression baked in, step 12 on the big cycle. Big increases in taxes, debt issuance, money creation, forex controls, capital controls, and financial repression to finance the wars. Sound familiar? Didn't they just say something? We're flipping in 2027 to a war economy or some shit? And here's why Bitcoin hit 72K the second that ceasefire dropped. Because the market isn't stupid. The market understood something. That moment that took Ray Dalio 50 years and a 10,000 word essay to explain. This isn't ending. The monetary order is cracking, and when empires overextend, when currencies get debased to fund wars, when capital controls start showing up at the borders of your savings account, people reach for the hardest money that exists.
If you have a prolonged conflict, that causes energy prices to spike enough. That causes the Fed funds futures and overnight rates to stay where they are, and for investors to demand a higher yield on long term bonds or long bonds, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year bonds. If they are demanding higher yields because they know that there's this excessive inflation out there, then what's the play? I mean, if you have a 10-year that's at over 5%, I mean, the U.S. Treasury can't refinance those 10 years with more 10 years. I mean, that would be catastrophic if we started refinancing 10, 20, or 10 or 12, 14, 15 trillion dollars of debt at 5%. That's not going to work, you know? So what do they need to do? And then you're talking about locking in 5% for 10 years plus. You can't do that. So what would they do? They would go out there and buy them instead. And that's the yield curve control. And that's the expansion of the money supply. And that's where you have the debasement trade really comes into play for these long-term assets that are not, you can't inflate them. Things like gold and things like Bitcoin, because they're going to be critical in this. We will see money printing. You will see yield curve control, no matter what they call it. And you will see assets like gold rip higher, and Bitcoin also.
Hey, before we get to what this entire Iran war was all about, if your Bitcoin is on an exchange, that is Larry Fink's Bitcoin. You have a paper claim on that Bitcoin. If your entire life savings strategy depends on a chain of counterparties, political decisions, central bank responses, bailouts, accounting games, and confidence staying intact, that is not peace of mind, that is dependency. And dependency is fine until it isn't. But thanks to our friends at the Bitcoin Way, you don't have to depend or trust these people or these old busted, crusty institutions with your generational wealth anymore. The Bitcoin Way sets you up with ironclad self-custody, proper hardware, your own node, full on-chain verification, so your Bitcoin is actually yours, not your bank's, not in exchanges. Yours. Their team handholds you through the entire process, the entire setup, step by step, until you've mastered it. No shortcuts, no myths, no single point of failure standing between you and your generational wealth. Book a free 30-minute consultation right now using that QR code or the link in the show notes, and begin your journey towards sovereignty today. The Bitcoin Way. Okay, now let's get to the question many people are asking here. What comes next? Lay it on him, Tim.
This second term has been the shit show, is this unimaginable, to almost to a point where I could almost, if I wanted to get really crazy here, I almost think is it almost chaos by design? Is there an element of this here that is so crazy and so over the top? And are they trying to induce chaos by design? Are they getting ready? You know what I mean? Like, it's so insane that you have to wonder, is there some part of this that they feel is a necessary step to whatever comes next? And I don't know what that is. And I almost don't even want to think about what that could even be. But is that part of this? Is this Now, I don't want to I don't want to he's got a real motley crew of people around him that they run the gamut from incompetent to nefarious. That being said, even considering how, clumsy and ham-fisted the rollout of all of these things has been, is there at some level, and I don't even know if there is, some method to this madness of complete chaos economically, culturally in the streets? Like, is there some method to this where people are going to see this and take advantage of it? And that they see this as some necessary step to what comes next. And I don't know what that is. That AI governance? Is it let's get rid of people because their husbands put on fake and, they're embarrassing and they lie and they're subject to blackmail so are we just going to say, hey, how about AI governance? Because, supercomputers and super intelligent beings, whatever, are we going there? Is that the next step? Is the next step like a centralized Putin style, more autocratic step, which involves the AI? It's the digital control grid. And the way to usher people into that is to raise the level of chaos so that people are welcoming of this, because it will be, by comparison, calmer. You'll lose all your rights. You won't be able to say anything. You won't be able to do certain things you used to be able to do. You're not starting a business, but you're not doing that now. You're not going to own a house, but a lot of people aren't doing that now. Is this the step before that next phase? I don't know. Is there something behind a lot of this that's even darker and more nefarious than the things that you're seeing?
I have never seen a question answer itself in such an eloquent way. But boy, is he on point, and so has Simon Dixon been on the moves being made and why.
This is not Trump's plan. This is not Q. This is not trust the plan. This is not a genius. Trump is the press secretary for his lobbies and greater powers.
He's the manager of the Burger King.
Now,
Yes, sorry.
Exactly. Now, do the greater powers, financial industrial complex, technical industrial complex, military industrial complex, have a plan? Yes, they hedge for every outcome. They use derivatives market. They launch military operations. They try and get the resources. They have a business plan around the Build Back Better and the Forever War. And they know that if you can usher in law changes for a technical Orwellian, technocratic surveillance state nightmare, then they've hedged every outcome. If this ends up in civil unrest, then the technical industrial complex creates a police and surveillance state. If they manage to achieve peace in the Middle East and get a deal, then the financial industrial complex gets all the Build Back Better contracts. If this all fails and IRGC resists to the point where this goes out of control, then you effectively have the Forever War model and you rebuild all these military contracts. So mass weapons are being sold, for defense, missile interceptors. And so BlackRock, as it were, State Street and Vanguard, the asset managers, they're okay, whatever happens. Now, you are right. Once you hit a point of $200 oil, you hit massive demand destruction. What is the model when you have demand destruction? Exactly what they did during the Great Depression of the 1930s. You consolidate wealth, just like the 2008 financial crisis. Get a big print, socialize the losses, privatize the gains, send all the small businesses bankrupt, send the individuals bankrupt, and try and put them on some kind of universal basic income.
No, you're 100%
There is a three-tiered strategy.
FDR
so
did
whatever the outcome is, they're going to concentrate wealth in the West. What is the resistance against that? This is the irony of the whole thing. Who's really draining the swamp right now? The factions of the IRGC that we would call the hardliners. They're resisting against the plan. They're taking out the US military bases. They're effectively pushing the Gulf countries away from the Epstein class over towards, China and BRICS.
Right.
And they're, and they're effectively fighting for that multipolar world, as it were.
We have a brief break for an important hyperinflation alert. Ladies and gentlemen, a pound of beef is now more expensive than the minimum wage.
This is interesting, Scott. A pound of beef is now more expensive than the minimum wage, so I'm told. What does that say about the economy?
Well, I tell you, the minimum wage hasn't changed in 17 years, since 2009, and it's $7.25. Yeah. But the last time they moved it up to $7.25 in 2009, Stuart, a pound of ground beef averaged around $2.20 a pound. Today, it's $8.34 a pound. Now, maybe you could argue that maybe minimum wage, if you're in that camp, needs to be moved higher. But still, it goes to show you how prices in general, not just beef, because I know a lot of cattlemen say they get a hard time. A lot of people don't talk about all the other things that have gone up in price, just like beef has. But it goes to show you what food prices have really done here recently, since probably 2019, against, say, 82,000 people that make minimum wage, how hard it is for them to put beef on the table now.
Yeah. If you ever need liquidity, possibly just to buy groceries in 2026, you can make loans to yourself and pay them off on your own time. Here's something most Bitcoiners never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. And selling means taxes. We know where taxes go, don't we? Selling means exiting your position. Selling means you lose. Ledn fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash, and you repay whenever you want. Zero penalties, zero monthly payments, and right now, Ledn just dropped their lowest rates ever. No fine print, no complexity. The larger your loan, the lower your rate. And you see every number up front before you even apply. Here's why I trust them personally. Your Bitcoin is custodied at all times, never lent out for interest. You get auto top-up protection, LTV alerts, and partial repayment options. So you stay in control through any market condition. That's not marketing. That's $10 billion in loans across 8 years with a perfect track record. Every market cycle, not one client's fund lost. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Ledn gives you both. Scan the QR or use the link below to head to ledn.io today. Whatever is going on, it does appear to be leading to a dark place. Hyperinflation, the possible death of the dollar, or the rebirth of it, a zombie new form that Ray Dalio actually warned us about.
Right.
What happens if the government issues digital currency? Like, what does that mean?
Well, digital currency is, right, you're talking about central bank digital currencies.
Yeah.
Okay, and that. There's a great deal of appeal because of the fact that it's easy and so on. But it's, and I think it'll be done. A lot happens.
You think it will be done?
Yeah, I think it's, but what happens in the digital currency, of course, it's easy to transact and so on, and it'll be like money market funds, I think. The question will be first, will they be able to offer interest? So there's a debate now as to whether they will be interest. If they're not able to offer interest, and there will be a debate, probably they won't be, but then they're not an effective vehicle to hold it in because you'll have the depreciation.
Of course.
You'd rather hold it in a money market fund or a bond, but that's debate. There will be no privacy, and it's a very effective controlling mechanism by the government. What I mean is all the transactions will be known. All transactions done with digital currencies will be known, which is good for illegal activities, getting control of illegal activities, but it also means that the government has a great deal of control. For example, they can tax that way. They can take your money. They can establish foreign exchange controls and the like. And that'll, so that's something that will be an increasing issue, particularly for international holders of that currency, because they might feel, let's say, if you're a Frenchman and they wanted to have sanctions, they could take your money.
Well, of course.
You know, and so on. So there's the privacy issue of that.
And if you're politically disfavored, you could be shut off.
Politically disfavored, you could be shut off. Yes. So those kinds of
The big print is coming. And the biggest winner in what comes next is Bitcoin.
Change that subject or tackle this from a different way. In the next little while in the economy, you're going to see supply chain shortages. You're going to see inflation like crazy. You're going to see crazy, and then there's going to be printing into that. Because if there isn't printing into that, there's going to be a deflationary collapse from money that can't allow deflation, that destroys all money. And so there is going to be, and it's likely an order of magnitude higher than what COVID was. As that happens and pushes prices up like crazy, at the same time as jobs are leaving the market, because the businesses have to use AI to get you to use their system to remove the job, because if they don't, you won't use their system because you won't have the money. So you're going to create this inflationary pulse, massive inflationary pulse. There's going to be food insecurity. There's going to be uprisings all over the world and everything else, because fertilizers are also going up in price. And all of these inputs are going up in price. At the same time, there's going to be massive printing to save the financial system. At that time, that inflation is going to cause demand destruction, right? Because people won't be able to afford it. Their jobs and what they get paid, especially in the businesses that pay them that, are going to have to shed that. There's going to be massive demand destruction, and it's going to collapse in a deflationary spiral. So now let's say, and so these things, if you look back into Weimar Germany, as it was going through this, you see this chart that goes up and down and up and down, and it flushes people up and down and down. We're used to living in stability. But when it looks like that, and we think we're outsmarting the market, we're going to take massive leverage at the time, thinking it's going to be devalued, and then it's going to go into deflation, and we're going to owe the leverage, and we're going to get wiped out. So a lot of people inside of this system, and it has nothing to do with Bitcoin, zero to do with Bitcoin, that this is happening. It has to do with money being debased at a crazy rate and physics coming due, right? And the free market coming due, and a realization that we live in a nonsensical world that is more and more control. And this is going to create psychological breaks everywhere too, in people, because they're not going to be ready. They're thinking they're living in a normal world that's always looked this way, and it's not going to look that way. And they're going to take, and so let's say now you, Danny, take this and take a huge mortgage, Bitcoin at this time, and then mortgage rates go way up at the wrong time. And what does that do to you when you think you played the game properly? Mm-hmm. So from the other system, which is growing in instability and has to do a certain number of things, which have second order consequences to people and third order consequences to people, and those people change what they think, right? From that, you can expect this crazy chaos, or you could just hold your Bitcoin. Right?
Look, if you're saving in dollars, you're basically praying to Kristi Noem's husband's knockers. We don't do that around here, do we, Tim?
Miss Noem is devastated. The family was blindsided by this, and they asked for privacy and prayers at this time. What am I supposed to pray? I'm supposed to pray for this guy and his... So wait a minute. All the horror that's happening in the world, people are literally being vaporized by machines of death, flying, in the air. We're schoolgirls while they sit in class, and I'm supposed to pray for Kristi Noem's husband and his H-cup. That's where the direction my prayers are supposed to go in. When the people in Gaza are wandering around trying to find grain so they can bake a loaf of bread, I'm supposed to pray for Kristi Noem's husband and his big. Well, no, I will not pray for your husband and his big. How about that? You can pray for his big.
That's right. We do not save in fiat or worship some guy's giant fake knockers. We like sound money, not unjust weight and measures used to oppress people. Oh, and would you look at that? Looks like Iran feels the same way. You want proof the dollar is dying in real time? Iran just put a Bitcoin toll booth on the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil supply moves through that strait. And if you want your ship to pass right now, you're not paying in dollars. You're not wiring a bank. You are sending Bitcoin, or you don't move. Why? Why Bitcoin? Because sanctions lock them out of every dollar rail that exists. Bitcoin doesn't care about sanctions. Bitcoin doesn't care about SWIFT. Bitcoin doesn't care about Washington. This isn't adoption. This is necessity. This is what happens when the dollar weaponizes itself out of relevance. Dalio told you the might is right world was coming. Iran just sent the invoice in Bitcoin. It also appears that smart money are building bunkers and preparing for Armageddon despite the ceasefire. You may want to as well. Our friends over at Sat123 have got you covered. Bitcoin protects your wealth, but it won't keep you connected when the grid goes down. Sat123 fixes that. Satellite phones, Starlink kits, Faraday bags, and backpacks built for people who take sovereignty seriously. Head over to sat123.com and don't forget, use code SIMPLY for 15% off. Hey, are you kidding me right now? You came this far? Look at our likes.
3 or 4 times, maybe.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Smash the like so I don't have to live under an overpass. Subscribe. Give us a pap. Send this to someone who still thinks we just achieved world peace because we are currently dwelling in Schrodinger's ceasefire. Hey, love you guys. Catch you tomorrow. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.